I get to introduce a good number of folks too. First, I want to introduce some of the Dallas Paleo Society volunteers. We helped to sponsor this week and bring on some exhibits. These are the folks that hunt regularly in the river and find all the stuff that I want to find. So they're good friends, but they irritate me a lot sometimes too. So I'm gonna kind of start over here and let y'all introduce yourselves. Joe, say hello. And Joe Simpson's been hunting down here nearly a decade. Just keep going around. David, remember these folks, their faces and their names. They can help you down in the river this afternoon.
I'm Mitchell Moore, and the Moorlings here. This is Nathan and Nicholas.
Yeah. A special thanks to all these folks, but today especially to Mitchell. Mitchell spent the last 2 days with me. We always take some time and spend some time in the school districts, the smaller school districts that are local to around here, the North Sulphur River. So Mitchell was helping me deal with 4th and 5th graders for the last 2 days, all day long. We had a great time over in Trenton and a great time over in Leonard. So really appreciate Mitchell's extra help. Some other folks, the McClures are here today. They're with the Paleo Society and also live out here near Ladonia. Sarah, where are y'all? Y'all introduce yourselves too. Y'all stand up. Stand up. Stand up. No, come on, stand up. Just so. Yeah, these folks for you know all the you youngsters in the room, girls. These two ladies will make the best finds of the day today, by far. So hang around them as well. Who else have we got as we go around? I don't want to leave anybody out. Joe West, over here. Dennis Brashear, here as well. Anybody else I'm leaving out from the Paleo Society? Oh, David. You going to hang around and hunt with us some today? Okay, well, y'all forget about David then. And that. Really appreciate these folks' help. They load up and pack up fossils and answer your questions. And man, we really enjoy spending time with y'all. We appreciate this place. It really is a treasure and a fun place for us. We are so appreciative of local folks here. Like the McClures and like Doug and all the landowners around here who are very kind to us and allow us to play and have some fun on the river and some of its tributaries as well. You know, I'd ask you to do the same thing we do and to take care of this place. Keep it clean, pick up trash, don't leave a trace behind. Folks are really very generous to allow the kind of public access that we have here, and we owe it to them to be kind and to take care of the place. There are some things you need to know about this river in terms of being safe, not simply today, but anytime you come out. I mean, in some respects, the North Sulphur River is open 24/7 every day. It is under Texas law, it's classified as a public waterway, so it's a public access place. So you can come down and hunt here, but you do need to be a little bit careful. It is a wild place and a wild river. The first thing you need to always be aware of if you're coming to the North Sulphur River is what the weather forecast is, because rain is a serious thing in this river. We're going to go out there today and there's barely a foot of water. A lot of the river is just dry. That's normally the way the river looks most of the year. But if we get a good rain out here in this small drainage area, if we get a good inch rain or certainly a 2-inch rain, that river can move from a foot deep to 35 feet deep in a matter of hours. And you don't want to be caught down in that river when it begins to flash flood like that. It happens very fast, and there aren't very, you'll see if you go down there today, there aren't very, this river has basically turned into a slot canyon. So it flash floods like a slot canyon would out west. And there aren't very many good places to get out of the river. There are only certain access points. So it's not a place that you want to go in and hike 3 or 4 miles and then get caught in a big rainstorm and a flood. It really can be dangerous for you. For those that kind of want to keep up with the river, there's actually a flood gauge. You can kind of look it up through what is that thing you look it up through? What is that agency? Yeah, NOAA, that's right. Look it up through NOAA on Google. There's a rain gauge down in Cooper. And my experience has been as long as that rain gauge is at 3 feet or below, you can access the river pretty well and enjoy hunting. There'll be enough dry places or sandbars or whatever that you can find some places to hunt. But if that gauge is over 3 feet, river's going to be running pretty hard, and there's going to be so much water that you can't really hunt. There are no exposed places for you to hunt very well. And if that river gets over 4 feet, 5 feet, the current's too fast and it's just too dangerous to be in. So be aware of weather, be aware of the state of the river, what kind of flood stage or dry stage it's in. The second thing I'd tell you about this river is that access points, even at bridges, even at the bridge we'll go to today if you want to come along with us on Highway 34, access to this river is not really easy. That is, there are these things called steps. They're really erosion barriers that are at the 34 bridge, but they were like steps made for giants or something, and they're falling apart. You're gonna have to do some sort of climbing and scrambling. I'm not trying to tell you it's an impenetrable barrier, it's not, but access to the river is a little bit of work. So really, once you get into the river itself, you're relatively safe. There aren't a lot of hazards and all of that. But getting down into the river and coming back out can be a little bit of a challenge. So be careful, especially if you got young people with you, children, kids today. It's not the place to just let them loose at the top of that canyon and see if they can make their way down. Keep them with you, keep them calm, get them down in the river, and then you can have a little bit of fun. Once you get into the river, depending on what state it's in, it can be, it's a river. It's got water. It's muddy. Those shale rocks and that marl, when the river's running a little bit with a foot or two, are really, really slick. So just kind of watch your footing a little bit while you're down there. If you like getting a little muddy and dirty you'll love this river. It's a fun place in that. But again, understand you're not coming to this isn't Disney World or something. It's a wild river that's out there. So be aware of that environment. Another thing I would tell you about in this river is be prepared for and aware of the summer heat if you come out here in the summer. This is a canyon that's 60 feet deep. There's almost never any wind that's blowing in there. It runs directly east to west, pretty much in a straight line. So it doesn't matter what time of day you're out there, the sun is on top of you all day. So be prepared with that kind of protection. I generally wear long sleeves and long pants. Not just to keep the sun off of me, and kind of loose fitting clothing. Always have a hat if it's going to be in the summer, and bring a lot of water, as much water as you can carry while you're down there. So be aware of that heat, especially if you're going to take a very long walk in the summer. There are, from time to time, you'll run into different kinds of animals on the river. Of course, there are, snakes and those kind of things. They generally don't really care about you. You can kind of herd them out of the way. They don't want to mess with you any more than you want to mess with them. But don't play with them. They might get irritated at that. Spiders, bugs, all that kind of thing that you would expect. But there are other kind of animals out here too. We not usually in the main river, but sometimes we can run into packs of wild hogs out here. They generally run away as well after you get scared and scream, and then they kind of snort and run off. But there can be all kinds of things. Bobcats, beavers. I've seen a few mountain lions out here a couple of years ago in a place. I've seen river otters. I didn't even know those existed anymore in Texas on the South Sulphur River. So you'll see a lot of deer and that kind of thing. So there are different kinds of animals. Sometimes some people's cattle gets loose. I've been in the river before, had to climb back out and call 911 because a lot of somebody's money was walking down the river, 40 or 50. And they weren't going to be able to get out. They were heading east, and somebody needed to do something about it, and I didn't know what to do about it. So, so you will run into a few different kinds of things. In fact, we got a guy, Jared Butler, he's not here today, hunts up here a lot. He's from Louisiana, and he swears to me that on the eastern side of the river, he's heard some gator bellows and seen some slides, and I just choose to think that Jared's full of it because I don't want to be thinking about gators when I'm like wading this deep in that water. So they may not be out there, I don't know, but somebody said they were, but yeah, I'm ignoring that. Speaking of animals, I've found over the years, it's a good idea out here to be aware of when hunting season is and to wear appropriate clothing. If you're especially deer season, sounds kind of like if you're here early in the morning, like World War I out here. And folks, I'll wander up creeks from the river a lot of times during the year, but I don't wander up anybody's creek during hunting season in that. For one, I don't want to mess up their hunt, but for two, I don't want to be mistaken for a deer either. So be aware of those seasons and those things that are going on also. Most of it's just common sense. Just take your time, be safe. There's no hurry. Just be sure you're a little bit prepared to be outside and to be in a wild place. I can't remember the last time there was really any kind of accident or problem out here, and don't ever expect any to be, but just be smart. Use a little bit of common sense. I'll be out to help you in the river this afternoon, along with a good number of these DPS volunteers. So if you got questions, we love talking about this stuff, so we're glad to talk to you in that, and glad to help you out. I would tell you that we're kind of at the end of a long summer season, and the North Sulphur River hasn't had very much rain at all since June. So we're not in the best hunting conditions, if you will. Most folks, these folks will tell you, we kind of wait till there's a big rain, and then it's a big race to see who can kind of get out here a couple of days after the river goes down from 35 feet back to 3 feet to see what all the river has knocked loose and uncovered. Every time there's a big rain, this river changes and the streams change dramatically in that. So right now, the river is pretty picked over. A lot of people still come out here and have hunted through the summer. So do what you wish. Walk around. I mean, finding fossils is so random, it's unbelievable. That's kind of why I like it. It could be anywhere almost. So somebody may come up today with the greatest fossil that's ever been found out here. I don't know. But my suggestion would be to you, if you go down there to hunt, you'd probably have more luck today just finding a good debris bar or sandbar and kind of sitting down and moving some dirt around and looking for small things like teeth and small shells, because most people walk over that stuff anyway and miss it, and that's the kind of thing that's most likely still out there today. But like I said, we may stumble upon a massive, who knows what we might find out there today. We got a lot of eyes, so we'll see what happens in there. Now I get to introduce our primary speaker, who, unlike all of us scouts and avid amateurs from the DPS, who is an actual scientist, a real paleontologist. So some of you young people, if you want to come talk to a paleontologist, see Nathan over here after we finish the program, and he can tell you what that's like and what you need to do. Nathan's always had a fascination with the past and a lifelong obsession with studying it. Paleontology is one of those passions. Sometimes he refers to it as the driver in his life. As a result of his studies, Nathan has published papers on various subjects and lectures at multiple professional conferences like the Geological Society of America and the Society of Vertebrate Paleontology. And he continues to articulate his ideas and his research on a global stage through social media. Nathan's a lot younger than most of the rest of us in that, and also works as a field worker and a fossil prep person. Currently, Nathan is working as a visiting professor at the Potomac State College in West Virginia, where he teaches geology and biology coursework. Nathan's done a lot of research, especially on the coastal paleoecology of the Woodbine Formation in north central Texas. He worked a lot with the Arlington Archaeosaur site in those early years. While he was in graduate school here in Dallas, Nathan's research specialization was on the Western Interior Seaway, which is the fossils that we find here at the North Sulphur River, and especially the mosasaurs that were here. He's worked on a whole bunch of things, and I'd read the rest of this, but I can't pronounce most of the words, so I'll let him do that. These different kinds of ichthyosaurs and tylosaurs that he's worked with. What is this, a dromaeosauridae?
Yeah, dromaeosaur raptors.
Raptors, okay, yeah, raptors. You should have just said that, man, raptors. Okay, I know what that is, okay. The most, the best thing I tell you about, I mean, all of that is really fascinating and cool and an awesome career, but most of all to me, Nathan's just a good guy and a friend. He's been in Dallas and been a member of the DPS for years and has helped out so many people. He's volunteered here at this event for a good number of years, and he's hunted here as well. So for me, I'm really glad to welcome here somebody who is one of our own and somebody who's made the big time as a real paleontologist. So Nathan, we're glad to have you here.
How's everybody doing today? Good. As Mick mentioned, my name is Nathan Van Vranken, and I'm here to wish you all an awesome National Fossil Day 2019. So, could I get somebody to get the lights for me real quick? Perfect. So again, my name is Nathan Van Vranken. I have a bachelor's and a master's from the UT school system, with a focus on paleoecology and paleontology. My main area of focus on research outside of the West Virginia and Texas geology is I actually study one of the Sulphur River's most famous and most commonly collected fossils, the mosasaurs. I also study ancient fish and dinosaurs that lived near the coastline. So I am going to take you on a little bit of a trip, a prehistoric trip, and we are going to look at some of the animals that can be found not only in the Sulphur River, but in various parts of time that made the coastline of the interior seaway their homes. Right here is an artist's representation of what the coastline may have looked like about 80 to 70 million years ago. So next slide, please. So this is the interior seaway about during the Campanian, so that's about 80 million years ago. Its size estimation is about 2,000 miles from the Gulf of Mexico all the way up into the Arctic Circle. So it's a rather expansive inland sea. And it is tectonically driven, meaning that the Earth's plate tectonics were a driving factor for how the waters were able to transgress onto land and cover what is now known as the interior of our continent. It is separated into three parts. You have Laramidia, where the Rocky Mountains are. You have Appalachia, where we are currently part of in this segment of time. And then if you click, you would have where Ladonia is placed. represented by that star. So the rocks underneath our feet are actually open ocean. And if we keep going, a lot of the limestone that you'll notice during your travels throughout the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex were deposited around this time. Right there in the picture, you will see a coccolithophore, which is one of the constituents of limestone. It's the building block of limestone. You will also have invertebrates that are commonly collected throughout here in the Sulphur River, along with other areas of Texas. And we also have a lot of different bony fish, very high diversity of bony fish. Right here is a geologic cross-section, and this is what geologists use to help decipher and figure what the past looked like as far as time increments are concerned. The oldest units of time are at the bottom, the youngest units of time are at the top. And the Texas Cretaceous, especially around here in North Texas, are mostly ranging from age dates of about 112, 113 million years ago. And then as you progressively head out towards the Big Bend region, it gets much younger, up to 72 million years. The oldest geologic formation that is commonly collected would be the famous Glen Rose Formation. What Texas looked like back then was much like the very first slide, where you had a lot of sandbars and beaches against a large savanna-like environment. Famous dinosaurs such as meat-eating theropods would patrol the coastlines looking for migrating long-necked sauropods. We move further into time, we get the famous Woodbine Formation, which the areas around Arlington and Euless, it's dominated mostly by sandstones. And the environment looked much like the Florida Everglades today, a coastal swampland. At this time, crocodile diversity was actually relatively high, so we have lots of cool new crocodiles coming from this area. Moving further, you see this black bar. That is the transition between the Cenomanian and Turonian, where the interior seaway waters start to transgress much further, and you have a maximum flooding stage, where most of the state was underwater. And you have the Eagle Ford Shale. Has anybody heard of the Eagle Ford Shale? Lots of energy and oil, but it's very important because it's a very important segment in time because you have large faunal transitions. Lots of animals that live in the early to late Cretaceous go extinct at this time, and some of the much more famous later Cretaceous marine animals start to show up in the fossil records, such as the earliest mosasaurs. Next, we go further into time into the Austin Chalk. This is where you have a large production of limestones, and so if you go anywhere from Austin all the way up into McKinney and you are taking the highways, all those large chunks of limestone were deposited at this time. This is considered the best time to experience the Western Interior Seaway. Diversity was extremely high. You can find large invertebrate clams that are around 10 inches in length and larger. You'll find large bony fish that can get anywhere upwards to 12 feet in length. Plus, your usual mosasaurs and plesiosaurs can be found during this time. However, Ladonia is actually part of the Campanian with the Ozone Formation, and it's equivalent to as the Wolf City Marl, along with the Pecan Gap. The Pecan Gap represents more limestone-dominated environments. These are the rocks that we will be hiking around in this afternoon. And then in the Campanian, you also have the Nadalinville and the Aguja formations.
Sorry to do this. It's ripping slowly across, so I wanted to stop it. So.
And
Now you just stand there for a long time.
Yeah.
The Aguja Formation is actually very swampland-like, and this is where some famous Texas dinosaurs can be found in the Big Bend region. And then finally, the Western Interior Seaway starts to recede up in the Javelina Formation, where Big Bend changes from a more tropical environment into savanna-like conditions. So, while we are working with this screen, we're going to start looking at our first group, the crocodiles that are found living along the coastlines of Texas. And they lived much like the modern crocodiles and alligators of today. The bones and partial skeletons, along with their bony osteoderms that run along their back and teeth, are the more common fossil finds. In the North Sulphur River, there are a few crocodile fossils that can be found. This suggests that some of these crocodile species may have been a little bit more saltwater tolerant than other species found in the area. One interesting fact is that crocodiles, they have very diversification going on in their teeth. So the different teeth in various crocodiles actually suggest what prey items they prefer. Up here in the upper right, you have Bernarsia. This was a small, around 2 meter length long crocodile, but his teeth actually interchanged from long pointed ones to more rounded ones in the back of his jaw. The ones in the back of his jaw suggest that he preferred eating shellfish like snails and also clams. So he would go out and either prefer those, whereas other crocodiles in his environment preferred eating fish. As we move later in time, such as looking at these sections of the interior seaway where the Aguja Formation has crocodile remains, you'll also get this large 6 meter plus size crocodile. This guy is called Deinosuchus. Any of the kids in here learn about Deinosuchus yet in school? This is a super croc. These are groups of crocodiles who have very large conical teeth and very robust skeletons, suggesting that they were specialized in eating dinosaurs that got a little too close to the water. Next slide. Now, flying above the crocodiles, you also have the pterosaurs and the birds. Now, pterosaurs and birds have very delicate bones. Okay? So the preservation in some parts of the interior seaway may not have these animals fossilized. The Sulphur River does have a few pterosaur and bird fossils found, but the chances are very, very slim, and that's because their bones are extremely hollow. And so if you are a very hollow animal and you die in the ocean, you're going to have the ocean waves crashing your body against rocks, and your body will start to, unfortunately, break down. And you won't have a chance to fossilize after scavengers pick the remains over. However, we can actually look at other shorelines found in the United States and all the way up into Canada and actually start to piece together what the Sulphur River's bird and pterosaur population may have looked like. And it may have looked almost like that picture in the upper right, with large pteranodon-like pterosaurs flying overhead, large stork-like azadocrids were wandering along the coastline. And geologically, the oldest pterosaurs come from the Albion, so 112 million years ago. And they were actually relatively pretty small. They were around the size of a crow. They weren't becoming the large monsters that are found in the Javelina Formation of Big Bend, where they were almost giraffe size.
I see some piles in that rendition, Are those nesting sites or something like that?
Those could be interpreted as either nesting sites, or they could have just been food caches where they would fly out to sea, collect fish, and just eat what they wanted and leave the rest behind in a pile for maybe another one to come scavenging by.
All right. Quick hand for our tech group.
Texas also has one of the earliest bird fossils. This one is actually found out by Lake Grapevine, and it's this sparrow-sized Flex ornis. Very pretty, probably about the size of a sparrow or robin. And however, that environment is very, very unique because not only is it possessing very small birds, but there are also footprints indicating a heron-sized or stork-sized fossil bird, but we have yet to find bone remains to that animal. And that animal is called Marja avipipus. Try to say that 5 times fast.
Do they find feathers preserved, or is that just kind of an estimation of what it might look like?
Unfortunately, we do not have feathers of those animals.
Nathan, have we verified that bird fossils have been found at the AAS?
I am unaware. So some of the animals that I like to work on are the big dinosaurs. One of the reasons why I became a paleontologist early in life is because I wanted to study dinosaurs. And dinosaurs made their home in just about every climatic and paleo environment. And here in Texas, they made the coastline their home. And they were a very successful group. Many of the habitats reflect on which groups were present in the environment. For an example, the duck-billed hadrosaurs and the armored nodosaurs actually lived closer to the water, whereas the horned ceratopsians, like Triceratops, actually lived more upland, along with much more heavily armored ankylosaurids, and even the long-necked sauropods preferred living in higher elevation environments. Dinosaur remains are also present in the North Sulphur River. They're extremely very rare, and paleontologists such as myself believe the animal actually may have died upland, and then its remains fell into the many river channels that fed into the interior seaway, and then were carried out to sea and then preserved. In Texas, we also have presence of very large carnivores. For example, in Big Bend, you have fossil evidence of the famous Tyrannosaurus rex, or a Tyrannosaurus rex-like cousin. And I have also collected remains of theropod dinosaurs, also known as the raptors, or scientifically speaking, the Dromaeosauridae. The theropods do not have a very restricted environment like the herbivores, and that is because they were actually going from environment to environment, basically looking for food. Next slide, please. Turtles. Turtles are found here in the North Sulphur River, and they first showed up in Texas during the Middle Cretaceous, and they still persist today. And much like modern turtles do today, they lived at marginal or transitional coastal zones, so they needed to live near the water. And they eventually adapted to seagoing lifestyles, and also increased in size. So up in the upper right, you have one of the smallest fossil turtles you can find here in Texas called Toxocheles. But underneath it, you have one of the larger species, Protostega. That is a person standing right next to the shell of Protostega. If you ever are interested in looking at a mount in person, the Pro Museum has a Protostega on display. At least 6 taxonomic families can be found in Texas, ranging from the traditional soft-shell turtle all the way up, again, to the large Protostega. And they lived in just about every ecological niche as long as it's near the water. And unfortunately, life in the interior seaway was very rough to be a turtle. because they were a pretty popular food item for a lot of the larger marine reptiles, such as our next group. The great famous mosasaurs, the animals that intrigued me and eventually coaxed me into professional study. Mosasaurs evolved from transitional forms such as Russellosaurus or Dallosaurus, seen in the bottom left, and sometime in the late Cretaceous, the Turonian stage to be exact, around 93 million years ago, and can be found in just about every marine environment in North America and on a global scale. Once these animals started to go from a transition from being on land and to being in the water, they diversified and became very, very successful. You can find mosasaur remains from the Turonian all the way up into the Maastrichtian here in Texas. They can be found as far west as Big Bend National Park in the Boquillas and older sediments, and around the Austin area for the youngest. At least 15 species of mosasaur have been found in Texas, with at least 8 of them being found here in the Sulphur River, along with 2 new species being described from UT Austin. And they are in the same family as the much common Tylosaurus species. They range in various sizes from small to about 3 meters in length, all the way up to at least 8 meters or more. So you're looking at animals that are around 40 plus feet in length at adult size for Tylosaurus. Also, their diets are very variable. The smaller species actually were more built to catch fast-moving fish, whereas the large Tylosaurus and Mosasaurus were actually large open ocean apex predators. We actually have fossil evidence where these things actually may have hunted dinosaurs if they got too close to the water. Next slide, please. The next group that I actually started to get a fondness of and are a very underrepresented group in Texas, and that would be the ichthyosaurs. Most ichthyosaurs, when people bring that up in discussion, are talking about those found in Europe. But Texas has ichthyosaur fossils found, but they're extremely rare, and by the time the North Sulphur River was formed, as far as a geologic formation, the Ozan formation, ichthyosaurs were long extinct. And they're very rare fossils, commonly found in the Middle Cretaceous, and we only have about 11 found in publicly accessible collections. All the remains are considered at least one genus called Platypterygnus. It's a ichthyosaur that grew to be about 5 meters in length. However, based on some of the research that I've been performing in the last 3 to 4 years, we may actually have a completely different species that is new to science. The paper that is describing that is currently under review, as myself being the author. The farthest west ichthyosaur remains can be found all the way outside of the Big Bend National Park, around the Fort Stockton area, and as far east as Tarrant and Grayson counties. So if you are a local around here and you start digging around Grayson and Tarrant County and you come up with a vertebrae that looks very fish-like, but it doesn't have the flaky bone texture fish does, I'd be very interested in it. These animals are very specialized feeders, especially during this time in the Cretaceous. Their long snouts and thin conical teeth were perfect for actually going out and hunting ammonites, these squid-like invertebrates, and they would go and swim up to them and use their snouts to actually coax the soft shell, the soft tissue of the ammonite out of the hard shell, leaving the hard parts behind and devouring it. And also the longer snout allowed them to go and speed along and catch bony fish unaware. However, during the later Cretaceous, and the introduction of mosasaurs and the rediversification of plesiosaurs, and the changing climate, they unfortunately had to go extinct. So right in the upper right, that's what a skeleton of one of these early Cretaceous ichthyosaurs looked like. That one was taken from the Queensland Museum. But underneath it are the teeth and vertebrae also in the picture. And that's an artist's representation of what an ichthyosaur looks like. Very dolphin-like, but when you look at their bones, they're much more fish and reptile-like. It's an example of convergent evolution, just similar shapes work out really well. Next slide, please. Another one of the more common fossil remains found in Texas, especially here in the North Sulphur River, would be the plesiosaurs. Sometimes people refer to them as the Loch Ness Monster, but one's a myth and one is actually based out of reality. And they are considered more of the unique groups found in the fossil record, as they have no modern representative. Mosasaurs, they have modern representatives today in the form of things like monitor lizards and snakes. Plesiosaurs don't have that. And the earliest plesiosaurs in Texas actually appear at the Cenomanian and Turonian transition. Geologically, the youngest will actually occur here in the North Sulphur River. So we actually have the youngest plesiosaurs found in the state. They tended to lived in cooler waters and helped fill the niche of specialist feeders that the ichthyosaurs left behind because of those long necks. However, they do split into two groups. You have the short-necked pliosauromorphs, and then you also have the longer-necked plesiosauromorphs. And they are really differentiated outside of their neck by also the ornamentation on their teeth and the way their paddles are shaped. In the upper picture, you have a picture of Brachychaeris, which is found in the Eagle Ford Formation. This one was collected from UT Austin, but it is a short-necked pliosauromorph. On the bottom is the famous picture of T.W. Tidwell and Lebanectes, a long-necked plesiosaur. Although several species of these pliosaurs may have reached sizes of 10 meters, the long-necked plesiosaurs reached 13 meters or more. And most of that was actually just their neck. And unfortunately, the pliosaurs could not survive the transition into the Turonian and therefore go extinct. Next slide, please. So that is a rough overview of some of the animals that can actually be found not only in the marine Texas, but some that can be found here in the Sulphur River. There is still plenty of new research in the works dealing with the river, and new fossil species and new historical and environmental impact studies are underway. And some of this information that's being utilized by scientists cannot be done without y'all, the general public and collectors. So, on behalf of the scientific community, thank you. I will now open the floor for questions and answers, and then we will depart to the river shortly. Oh, and a raffle.